when CBC says they're demanding an entry fee for us to start talks again, makes it sound like they want cash. No, they want a concession, which CBC, I will admit, did say in their story. But then all day on my TV box, I had person after person, reporter after reporter, guest expert after guest expert, talking as if they wanted us to pay up. CBC told two lies to support their initial lie about the entry fee.
Mark Carney was elected on the premise that he would get a deal with Donald Trump and that he would get one fast. Shortly after the election is what he led everybody to believe. But that's not what happened, as we know, as it's been now over a year since he made those promises and we still have no deal. So now we're about to get back into the KUSMA negotiations. And what the mainstream media is trying to tell us is that the Americans are asking for an entry fee. Brian Lilley of the Toronto Sun broke this down yesterday in one of his famous Lilley Unleashed videos, and he's here to talk about that today. Brian, welcome back to Northern Perspective.
Thanks for having me on. As you were introing this, I thought I got to pull up that quote from Carney that I used in one of my columns at the Sun the other day. And I keep going back to this one. He said, "I know the president. I've dealt with the president in my past, in my previous roles, when he was in his first term, and I know how to negotiate." Hasn't worked out, has it?
We will handle Donald Trump.
Yeah. Look, can anyone handle Donald Trump? Well, you're not negotiating with Donald Trump, to be honest. Once he gives the go-ahead, you're negotiating with a very smart, sober guy named Jameson Greer, who was before the House Ways and Means Committee yesterday saying very good things about Canada and the CUSMA deal. The phrase he used was, the deal, he calls it USMCA, says USMCA has load-bearing walls that we don't think about. Basically saying it is very important for the American economy. But yet I think we're being fed a line by Carney, and we're being fed a line by most of the national media. But CBC with this entry fee story just really got me wound up.
So in a nutshell, what you talked about on your video, and I encourage everybody to watch the full thing. You'll be able to find this as a link in the description. And don't forget to subscribe to Brian's Substack because he puts a lot of great material out there. What you'd said was that, no, this is not an entry fee. This is essentially trying to get us back to equilibrium, because the narrative that has been put out there is that, yes, Donald Trump put these tariffs on us from the beginning, and we can all agree that that was bad for Canada. But the response ended up being that we actually violated the agreement that we are trying to point to as being the best deal for Canada, if you listen to Mark Carney.
So the Americans started this, no doubt. But our response to the American tariffs was not just over the top, it violated normal trade practice rules. So when CBC says they're demanding an entry fee for us to start talks again, makes it sound like they want cash. No, they want a concession, which CBC, I will admit, did say in their story. But then all day on my TV box, I had person after person, reporter after reporter, guest expert after guest expert, talking as if they wanted us to pay up, like cash, give them cash, which, Donald Trump does have the Trump gold card. I can't believe that there is a U.S. government website where you go called Trump Gold Card, and you've got the president's face there, and it looks like a credit card, and you can put down $15,000 to have your application looked at, and if they accept you, then you pay $1 million and you get a visa to live and work in the U.S. So you think of that. Well, okay, is it that far-fetched that he would charge us money to negotiate? And of course, Lutnick has described trading, if you want to be in the US market, it's like Costco, you've got to buy a membership. But they didn't ask for that. They asked for a concession. And then CBC told two lies to support their initial lie about the entry fee. And that is that we gave Americans concessions already when we removed our retaliatory tariffs last year. And I believe it was beginning of September we did that. And that we gave them a concession when we scrapped the digital services tax. And I would argue neither one of those is a concession. Because first off, the digital services tax, which both Democrats and Republicans have been against, which the Biden administration warned us not to do, they would challenge it. And the Trump administration said, please don't do that. We will challenge it. Why would they challenge it? Because it's a clear violation of Article 19 of KUSMA, which says that you don't impose digital taxes. I mean, the language couldn't be clearer. And on the retaliatory tariff side, here's how tariffs and counter tariffs normally work. So the Americans put tariffs on our steel, our aluminum, and our autos, 25 to 50% depending on the product. You normally counter with putting tariffs on those same products or similar products or a similar value. What we did was we put tariffs on their steel and aluminum and autos. And then we put in another $30 billion worth of tariffs on consumer goods, things like coffee. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember last summer, Ryan, like the price of coffee went through the roof?
Absolutely.
So it's a little bit better now, but it's still more expensive than I like. But last summer, it was insane. That's because the biggest coffee producing nation in the world is Brazil. They had a tariff slapped on them. How do we get a lot of our coffee? We get a lot of Brazilian beans that are shipped to the United States, and then our companies buy them from the Americans. So they would slap their tariff on the coffee coming in from the places like Brazil, and then our companies would import it into Canada, and we would tariff the coffee coming in. So we were making it more expensive. So we put tariffs on things like coffee, prepared foods, furniture, appliances, but these were all goods covered by KUSMA. The Americans, when they enacted their tariff on March 4th, 2025, they made it sound like it was on everything, including KUSMA compliant goods. But then they issued another executive order clarifying it a day and a half, 2 days later, and saying, no, 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 no. If it's covered by what they call USMCA, these tariffs do not apply. And that's where you get the 85% of our goods enter into the United States tariff-free because they're KUSMA compliant. Well, that was March 4th to March 6th. By March 6th, they've clarified. By March 6th, we've already added not only the tariffs on autos, aluminum, and steel, but the $30 billion on goods that I've just been describing. And we kept that on. We kept that on until September. And the Americans are finally saying to us, hey, wait a minute, like, we're not tariffing KUSMA compliant goods. You are. You're in violation of KUSMA. And if you don't stop this, we're going to have to retaliate. So, you look at all the things we've done. We didn't do the normal retaliation. We've gone above and beyond. And I haven't even mentioned the booze part of this yet.
Yeah. And this is where it gets disturbing, because CBC and the other legacy news organizations, they're supposed to have done the research. They're supposed to have already dug into this and understand all of this. So we have to assume that they have. So the fact that they are putting out this,
that is a very bad assumption.
Well, they're either doing that, or they're lying directly to the Canadian people. It's one or the other, as far as I see. But either way, they're not doing their job.
I think a lot of them just don't understand. I don't think they understand what they're talking about. I think that's the problem. And you really see that when the discussion turns to supply management, which I get it. Supply management is a very difficult thing to understand, even after talking about it for all these years. But you keep hearing that, well, they want to get rid of supply management. For more than a year, going back to the Biden admin, I've been talking to Americans in the trade sector, in the government sector, in the business sector. I've talked to elected officials, House of Representatives, senators. Nobody has said that they want to get rid of supply management. And yet, almost daily, in the legacy media, you're going to hear that they're coming for our supply management. Ambassador Hoekstra has said that is not the case. What they want is that in the last negotiations for KUSMA, they want us to live up to that. So they negotiated greater access for their dairy, be it cheese, dry powdered milk, liquid milk, which no is it's not filled with bovine growth hormone. Everyone relax. American milk is safe. Um, they negotiated a certain amount of access through a quota system, and anything that goes above the quota gets tariffed. So that's where you hear about the 245, 298% tariff. It's only if they go above the quota. And then you hear, I don't know why the Americans say they want more access. They don't even fill their quotas. Here's what we did that has them upset, Ryan. And this is something that I don't think most of my colleagues understand, or they wouldn't be saying over and over again, hey, the Americans want to get rid of supply management. We said you can have this much access under a quota system, but the people who hold the quota, well, that's going to be Saputo or Agripur or Armstrong cheese. The big dairy companies in Canada that don't want the competition decide whether to bring in the American product. The Americans don't get to say, hey, Loblaw, we want to offer you this cheese that's really good from Wisconsin, or this New York State cheddar. The representative for New York State, just across from Southern Ontario, Candice Teeny, I believe is her name. She was on the House and Ways Committee yesterday, lamenting the fact that her district is one of the top dairy producing regions, and they can't sell into Canada. And it's frustrating to them. We are blocking them. We said you can have this amount of quota that you can sell into Canada, and then we turned around and blocked them right away. And then we like, well, look, we're just protecting our supply management. No, we're in violation of the agreement. And we keep doing this and then wonder why they get upset.
And this is what I think a lot of Canadians know. I know a lot of Canadians don't know, because I wasn't even aware of that until I heard you talk about that on your video. And I think it's just gobsmacking to a lot of people. But this is what we've come to now see. It's this endless parade of anti-American rhetoric and sentiment coming from the liberals, and it's coming from the mainstream media. And I'm even seeing, you're probably seeing it now, these fake Donald Trump posts that are being circulated on social media where he's allegedly saying something about Mark Carney in Canada. People believe it because Donald Trump says some crazy things sometimes, but it's not even true. And I saw something yesterday
Yeah.
about allegedly Donald Trump commenting on this committee and calling that Mark Carney put together and calling them a bunch of losers. I have yet to be able to find Donald Trump's True Social post where he actually said that. So there's a lot of very interesting anti-American sentiment that's going on. And are you seeing the same thing?
Oh, yeah. And I saw a fake post the other day saying 89% of Canadians blame Donald Trump for the state of our economy. It's not true. There is no poll saying that. But it's one of these things that just gets shared on Facebook over and over again. And by the way, I've seen it shared by people who say, yeah, Donald Trump is to blame. And I've seen it shared by people who say, can you believe these carny boomers that will believe anything? And that's not true. Look, there's a lot of fake news out there and fake posts. Uh, I just want to say that I don't want people to think the Americans are completely blameless in this ongoing trade dispute. But we are to blame ourselves. We do our own things that irritate them. And they document this all, by the way. They publish it in an annual publication that comes out and says, here's all the trade problems that we have with all these countries, and here's how we're trying to fix them. They are very open. And they're also very open when they start trade negotiations. They're required to publish what their goals are. We don't do any of that. And so you just get governments going around making noises. Look, the Americans are bad when it comes to their Buy America provisions. One of the things they complain about, Canada, is that we've started Buy Canadian policies. We didn't used to have those, but their Buy American policies have been ratcheting up year after year, starting with Obama, then Trump's first term, then Biden's second term, and even worse in Trump's second term. So, they do have their own issues and their own problems that they come after us with. But whether it's getting past the fake news, these fake social media posts, getting past legacy media stories that don't tell you the whole truth. We need to know what's going on. We need to know the real facts if we're going to understand it. If not, it's just going to lead to more of this, well, ignorant anti-Americanism and this belief. I mean, I can't believe that the reaction when I explain some of this and people just say, well, it doesn't matter. We shouldn't be trading with the Americans. Let's just expand our trade and get away from them. 2024, the last year that I've been able to find solid data for the full year. We'll soon get full data for 2025. But 2024, our top export market was the United States. We sent them 420 billion US worth of goods and services. The second biggest export market, how big do you think it would be?
So I believe it's down around 20 to in the 20 to 40 billion range, I believe.
It's $21 billion to China. Then it's Britain at 19 billion, Japan at 10 billion, and then Mexico is 6 billion. Our total two-way trade with Mexico, I think, is in the 40 billion range, and that's almost all us importing from them. Our exports to countries that are not named the United States of America are very small, and it falls off a cliff after Mexico. We can't just get angry at the Americans and say, well, we don't need you anyway. We do. Can we negotiate from a position of strength? Absolutely. I think so. If we don't put ourselves in a weak position, we can find a position of strength. We can get a good deal, and we need a good deal. Otherwise, whether it's GM workers in Oshawa or Stellantis workers in Windsor or steel workers in Hamilton or Sault Ste. Marie, or there are steel workers elsewhere outside of Ontario, in Regina, in Edmonton, down in Nova Scotia. If we don't get a deal, these workers are going to continue to hurt. Small businesses, medium-sized businesses are going to continue to hurt. The only people that can afford this trade war to go on are either in the laptop class, which, I'm a member of the laptop class. It's either the laptop class or retirees who mostly have their retirement funds wrapped up in the S&P 500 in New York City and aren't all that invested in Canada, much like Mark Carney. So those are the only people that can weather this. We need real information. We need a sensible view, and we need to get a deal. And you're not going to get a deal when we're constantly being bombarded with fake CBC stories or fake social media posts just designed to gin people up.
Well, thanks for providing some clarity on this, Brian. And the other industry that we're following very closely is the mold, tool, and die industry in Windsor and Quebec and across the country. 58,000 jobs. And if that industry disappears, that can have a broader impact on the 2.1 million manufacturing jobs in Canada, but also in U.S. districts like Windsor. So continue to follow us on that story. We're going to be dropping another significant video later today on that. Brian, thank you so much to you and all the folks at Post Media for doing the work that you do to call out not just Mark Carney, but your peers as well.